Hi everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Danny and I was an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for 60 years. And as a Latter-day Saint, I fully accepted what Joseph Smith said about the Book of Mormon being the most correct book on earth. I also agreed with what Smith wrote in the 8th article of faith, which states, quote, "We believe the Bible to be the Word of God as far as it is translated correctly. We also believe the Book of Mormon to be the Word of God," end quote. And with that article of faith, most members of the LDS Church have reservations about the reliability of the Old and New Testament. Joseph Smith has placed doubt in their minds if they can trust it. Can they really trust what the Bible teaches? Have plain and precious things been removed by the wicked priests as they were translating the Bible, as the Book of Mormon claims? However, if you were to ask any Latter-day Saint to specifically identify any errors in translation or any of the plain and precious things that were missing in the Bible, I don't think they could. I know they can't. On the other hand, they fully trust the Book of Mormon to be correct because Joseph Smith endorsed it as the keystone of Mormonism. Modern LDS prophets have even said that the truthfulness of Mormonism stands or falls on the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. My question is, if the Book of Mormon is supposed to be a direct translation of an ancient record, why is it so reliant on the King James Bible, which supposedly is riddled with translation errors? Why would God allow these errors from the Bible to be included in the translation process of Joseph Smith's peepstone in a hat? Was God carefully selecting only those passages out of the Bible that were translated correctly to be in the Book of Mormon? Well, stay tuned as we discover the answer to these questions. Today, we are going to examine one of the many portions of the Book of Mormon that is highly problematic. I'm referring to Mormon, the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Mormon, chapter 9. That is a copy of the long ending of the Gospel of Mark. Most Latter-day Saints would not even know that it was in the Book of Mormon, but it will prove to be just another clear example of plagiarism used by a 19th century author. Here's the issue. Bible scholars have verified that the last 12 verses in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, are not found in the oldest and most reliable manuscripts of the Bible. The oldest manuscripts are known to be the most accurate because they were closer to the earliest copies from the original autographs. The vast majority of later Greek medieval manuscripts of Mark do contain verses 9 through 20. But Bible scholars agree these verses were added later by scribes in the translation process. For example, the 1611 King James Version contains these verses 9 through 20. But since older and more accurate manuscripts have been discovered, they confirm that verses 19 through 20 were not in the original Gospel of Mark. I won't take time to read these verses, but I encourage those of you who are Latter-day Saints to read them for yourselves. These 12 added verses cast doubts and suspicion on Mark as their author. As you read the entirety of chapter 16 in the Gospel of Mark, you will notice an abrupt and awkward transition between verses 8 and 9. The word "now" that begins at verse 9 should link everything that follows. But what follows does not continue with the narrative ending in verse 8. Instead, there is an abrupt change in describing Jesus' appearing to Mary Magdalene, lacking the continuity of Mark's gospel. Also, for Mark to introduce Mary Magdalene here as though for the very first time in verse 9, it is odd because she has already been introduced in the first part of the chapter. Just another piece of evidence that this ending section was not written by Mark. Furthermore, the vocabulary in these verses are not consistent with Mark's gospel and doesn't read like Mark's writing. The references to signs in verse 17 and 18 do not appear in any of the other three gospel accounts. You won't find any discussion of signs like picking up serpents, speaking with tongues, casting out demons, drinking poison, or laying hands on the sick. It's only foreign to the Gospel of Mark. Because this long ending of Mark has become a consensus among biblical scholars to not be in the original manuscripts, more modern translations of the Bible provide a disclaimer in the side margins or footnotes stating that the earliest manuscripts do not include verses 9 through 20. There are only a handful of passages in the Bible that can now be identified as translation errors, and this is one of them. Another example, just to give you an idea, of an insertion by a scribe in the story is the story of the woman taken in adultery found in John chapter 8, verse 1 through 11. This is a sort of a favorite story that's in the Gospel of John. It's a beautiful story, but it's not certain that it was ever originally in any of the manuscripts and should be included. That passage was also absent from our oldest two and best manuscripts, and modern translations such as the NIV and the ESV will include that passage, but put brackets around those verses to show that they were not in the original text. Having said all that about the Bible, how on earth did this questionable material make its way into the Book of Mormon? The short answer is that Joseph Smith was not aware of the problematic issues when he decided to copy the long ending of Mark into the Book of Mormon. Oops. Not only does the Book of Mormon contain these dubious scribal teachings, but the Book of Mormon has them in the exact same wording as the King James Bible. The odds are practically zero that these words would be exactly what Jesus supposedly taught in the Gospel of Mark. Joseph Smith quotes the exact phrasing in the Book of Mormon from an ending that scholars know now was attached long after the Gospel of Mark was first written down. So let's do just a brief comparison. Mark chapter 16, verses 17 through 18, quote, "These signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils, they shall speak with new tongues, they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." End quote. Now, let's go to Mormon chapter 9, verse 24, and listen and see the very same words used here in this passage. Quote, "And these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name shall they cast out devils, they shall speak with new tongues, they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it will not hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover." End quote. Now, let me ask you a question. When was the last time a Latter-day Saint cast out devils, or spoke in tongues, or handled serpents, or drank poison without harm? Does that really sound like practical advice to anyone? I don't think so. Let me compare one more verse from Mormon chapter 9, verse 22. Quote, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." End quote. That line is taken directly from Mark chapter 16, verse 15. And from Mormon 9, verse 23, it says, quote, "And that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned." End quote. That line is also taken or copied directly from Mark chapter 16, verse 16. Both verses were added by scribes later in the Gospel of Mark and are not originally part of Christ's teachings. But somehow they ended up in the Book of Mormon. I will prove in other videos that there are many verses and passages copied from the King James Bible into the Book of Mormon and the problems that come along with that. And to claim Joseph Smith did not plagiarize the Bible goes against all common sense. You know, as a Latter-day Saint, I heard Apostle Jeffrey Holland once proclaim, quote, either the Book of Mormon is what Prophet Joseph Smith said it is, or this church and its founder are false, fraudulent, a deception from the first instance onward. Not everything in life is so black and white, but it seems the authenticity of the Book of Mormon and its keystone role in our belief is exactly that, end quote. Well, I personally wanted to know if the Book of Mormon was true. I studied it, I prayed over it. However, after carefully studying it more and more and examining it carefully, I am now convinced that the Book of Mormon is nothing more than a 19th century book of fiction written by Joseph Smith. Something to consider. Thanks for watching and listening, and please share with family and friends. And check out more videos like this on YouTube, or you can go to my website at talkingtomormons.com. And until next time, God bless.